As Kate said, my name is Bailey Albus, and I am the Youth and Family Programs Specialist here at the National World War II Museum. I want to do a quick thank you to everyone that is joining us from our virtual summer programs. You guys have been really engaged and active for the past 4 weeks, so this is a great way to end our programming with a very unique and special opportunity to talk with a veteran. So just really quick, I want to introduce Emma Mathes. She is a Victory Corps volunteer. This is a teen volunteer program at the museum that we run. She's been a volunteer for a very long time. She is a graduating senior, so this is kind of our last hurrah together. And, we're really going to miss her. She's done some really great things over the years. She's been an active leader and given a lot of her time to the museum. So thank you, Emma. And I'm really glad that we get to do this last thing together. So just so everyone understands the format, Emma is going to ask George some questions. And then if there's anything that is left that wasn't answered that you are still curious about, we encourage you to ask those questions in the Q&A, and then I will ask George those questions at the very end. So I'm gonna mute myself, I'm gonna close my video, and I'm gonna let Emma take over from here. Thanks, guys.
Sounds good. Okay. Mr. George, where were you born?
In Austin, Texas.
And how old were you when you were drafted into the Army?
Right now, I was drafted in the Army at 18.
Wow. What were your different jobs when you were in the military?
Well, I was
Different jobs.
Oh, the different jobs in the military. Yes, okay. In my basic training, of course, I was fortunate to have had ROTC in high school, and so that helped me through my basic, and also helped me also to become a leader in there. They're like the squad leader and platoon leader, and also eventually the company guide, carrying the flag out in front of the company, which I did in ROTC. So they found out about it. That was one job they had, and then after I went overseas, I went through a training of 3 weeks to become whatever. I didn't know what it was when I was being trained. I didn't know what I was being trained for. Really, they didn't tell me until later on. Found out that I could see in the dark because of the machine went from one, clockwise, just like a clock on the wall. I could see those dots whenever they moved to it. And the last one of the sergeant said, well, I don't understand how you saw that one because the light was out. And so he said that was the last one. I moved it, but there was no light for it. So he said, and you got it right. So anyway, that was a job there, you might say, in that training. And come to find out, I went into a little room that was about 15, 20 feet wide, that was about 30 feet long, and it had about 18 machines in there, teletype machines. And they were all going clickety, click, 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 and everyone, can you imagine 18 of them do it at one time with all that clicking going on? Oh. Well, I had to send a message to Washington, D.C., so that was as a test. And it was a message that was, the officer told me it was classified, that I couldn't talk about it and stuff like this. But they sent the message, and when it came back, because that was a particular thing in the job they trained for, I got the message back about 10 minutes after I sent it. That was clear and over and out, so that was it. So then the officer then took me to my captain, who really wanted me to do the job because I could type. They're looking for typists, and I was about the only one they found that could type in that group that went over at that time. And so I told the captain, I said, sir, I'm an old country boy. And if I work about a week in that room, I would be a babbling idiot. So he says, he laughed and said, okay, Private, he says, you got your Jeep. So my next one was a messenger that I carried messages from 5 different organizations, and to make sure that they were only messages from organization to organization only. You know, there's a lot of secret stuff in there, but we didn't know about it, but it was in bags. We had to deliver and pick up those messages. So that was my second job in there. And that's the one that and also sometimes when there was no messages or something like this between the organizations, I would work in the communications room there, dispersing all of those particular messages that would go to the different organizations. So I was a dispenser of those, also working in the office. So that's the only job I worked on up there. So that's about the only ones I had in the military, of the Army, that is. Of course, now I had several in the Air Force. That's different. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, so the messaging system that you had said that you sent to Washington, D.C., that was the framework for the internet, correct?
Yes. That
Awesome.
was fun.
How does it feel that you were one of the few alive today that worked with the beginnings of the internet?
I had a little bit of trouble with that one because I had no possible idea about anything happening like this. You know, that teletype machine blew my mind just about right there whenever I was operating it. And I got that message back in 10 minutes from Washington. I said, oh no, I didn't understand that. So how could I understand this one, this now to present day? So it's even present day right now. In this right here, it just tears me up. How in the world that's possible? But it's working. It's beautiful work, and it's great. I love it. I love the internet. You know what you could do with it and everything. And of course, we could order materials, get it the next day or a few days later. All that kind of stuff right there on that little box, as you might say, or telephone. Yeah. So that I really wouldn't have been able to think of anything like this happening, you know. But I knew that it was going to be, if they can do that with a teletype machine, there's no end of what they could probably do. Now I did have that thought in the future. But that's about it.
Wow. Okay. So when I was reading your bio that they sent me, it said that your horse was dishonorably discharged from the Army. What is the story of that?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, that's on horse. I had a little donkey, and I wanted to get me a horse, and so I found out that Mr. Fogel, about a half a mile away from me up the road where I live, had a horse, and so he didn't have it for sale. But I went up and talked to him, took my little donkey up there, and I'd like to trade him for a horse if you don't mind. So he said, well, I got that one right there. I'll sell you. And so anyway, I said, and he told me the story about it. I said, I was a little bit scared about it. You know, what happened was he was drafted into the Army. They got this horse, the Army did, the cavalry, and they started training him to be a cavalry horse. You know, they have to be tough, they have to be trained, and they have to be know what they're doing, even these horses, because they trained them to do that. Well, there's one thing the Army, the cavalry, could not out-train this horse from, and that was his skittishness. He'd be loping around or walking or running or whatever they're doing, and if a little bird flew in a bush or somewhere, you know, he would jump maybe about 2 or 3 feet to the side, throwing the cavalrymen off the horse and stuff like that. That happened all the time. They tried to train it out of him, but They couldn't do it. So they did him a dishonorable discharge and sold him off of Bach. And there was a place in Houston down there that they bought the horse. And so the horse was sitting in there. Well, he didn't like the stall that he was in, so he broke the door down and he tore it up pretty bad, kicking him down and everything. So they said, we got to get rid of this thing. So Mr. Vogel happened to be there. He bought it and bought it for just a little bit of nothing, so to speak. And so I looked out at the horse. I said, well, he's about what I want, but I don't know. Anyway, I looked out there again and saw the horse, and there was about 5 little kids on his back. There was anywhere measured about 3 years old up to about 5 or 6 years old on his back. And there was about 5 of them. One of them fell off. The horse stopped. They were beating him, trying to get him to run, but he just walked. And that little kid fell off. The horse looked around and saw that little kid on the ground. He would not move. They were kicking him, trying to get him to go. And another one trying to pull him up on the back. Well, they pulled him up on his back, and the horse looked around and started walking off. He would not move as long as that kid was on the ground. And so he's very smart. He's a very smart horse. And so I said, I want him. When I saw that, I wanted him. And so he turned out to be a very good friend of mine. We were pals. I just named him Pal. And so because we became pals and really become dedicated to one another. Well, my job that I was working at the textile mill, the guy that I was riding with went to night shift, a day shift rather. We were at night. And so I had no ride. So I just saddled my horse up and rode him in. And the manager let me put him out in some grass there back behind the mill. And so it worked out really good. So I rode him to and from work every day, 6 miles. And so that happened until such time the Army called me up. So that was for 3 or 4 months that I rode him that way. And every night I'd get off at 2:30 in the morning. He'd jump up. He was laying down resting. He'd jump up, ready to go. So I'd saddle him back up and go my 6 miles again. That was at 2:30 in the morning. So he was a fine horse. I loved that horse. He was great.
Wow.
He loved to run. He loved to run, but I didn't want him to run. So I held him back as much as possible.
Awesome. Okay. What is one lesson you learned from living during the World War II era that you think young people should learn and put into practice today?
One lesson you've learned that you could give as advice to others.
What?
One lesson you've learned that you could advise to others.
Oh, that, yeah, okay. I need that. Anyway, one of the things was the fact that these guys that did the fighting, there's 3 of them, I believe it was, that I had met, and we all talked together. I asked them questions about it, and they would. Some of them were reluctant about talking very much about their services, about what they did, stuff like that. And I took a look at their particular personalities and lives after the fighting had subsided, and they were sort of relaxed a little bit, waiting for their time to ship back home. And they gave me a little bit of advice, and everything that I just passed on. But that whatever you know, whatever you're doing, whether you're behind the lines, up on the lines, or what, do everything that you've been called to do. Take care of it with not a grain of salt, but take care of it with pride, and go forth and do the job to the best you possibly can. And that's what those guys implied to me and really explained to me that would be the best thing. So whatever you do, if you go into the military, you go in there, you pick your job. If you have that choice to pick a job like maybe security or something like that, and you like to get into law enforcement or something, all right. If you want to, if you feel that that's the job you want, take it, get your training, and put your whole heart into it. Do the job as best you possibly can, and just stay with it. I would suggest then, after you complete your tour, if you feel like you really want to make that a career, head for it and do it. That's what I did. After I got out of the Army, I found a job. I was luckily right away. I found a job pretty well after it was about 3 months. But I didn't look for one very hard because of the fact that the government was still taking care of me. I got a $300 discharge bonus, whatever they call severance pay. And so anyway, that sustains me and my family and a good little while there. And another thing too, the government also had a 5220 program. And what that was $20 a week for 52 weeks. You had to be there to sign up for it and get your $20. And so I did that about 4 or 5 times was all I did. But the last time I did, I stood up at the courthouse door steps. I looked across the street, and that was a gas company there. So I walked over and saw this gentleman sitting at the counter, and later found out he was the manager. And so he asked me about some questions, and I said, were you in the military? I said, I just got my discharge from the military, just had returned from overseas. So then he told me, sign your application. That's okay. So he handed it to me. Okay, I did. He used to come to work at 7:30 in the morning, so I got a job right away. And so I tried to pour everything I had, possibly using that same judgment to work at a civilian job. I did that for a while, and then I got in reserve. And then from the reserve, Army Reserves, I made corporal during that time in the reserves. And so my brother-in-law signed up in the Air Force. So the recruiter nabbed me by the throat, said, come on. So I was signed up into the Air Force. So after I got my first 4 years, I made up my mind I won't make this a career. So I stayed with it, and I finished with 25 years. So I tried to use that same policy that these guys bore into my mind, and told me about to do the best you can with the job you can. And so that's what I tried to do. I tried to do it the way they said to do it. Those were pretty smart guys, I thought.
Yeah, they seemed very smart.
And, yeah.
What was one of the war stories that you were told and you'll never be able to forget? And why did it leave such a lasting impression in your mind?
One of the war stories you were told that you would never forget.
That one is a very memorable one that will never escape my mind. The people that they were volunteers, every one of them were volunteers to do a job with General Doolittle. And I know you know what I'm talking about. And so those guys flew those planes over Tokyo, knowing that they possibly will not even return. But they did a job. That's one that will never escape my mind. I'm sorry, but that touches my heart to know what they did. There's some did get through. I don't remember exactly how many, at least 2 I know. And the others, they suffered and died for our freedoms. who tried to beat the enemy first. That's That'll never escape my mind. I'm sorry.
Take all the time you need. You're good.
What you? Yeah, I thought that was about the best description of what that would ever escape my mind that I had. In all my services, all of the war, throughout the whole war, that very one. And the pictures are showing up right there. On the one of the drawing that was taken in Salzburg, Austria. I was off duty, and I was walking down the street one day, and there was this street artist was sitting there, and he asked me, in German, of course, and with the handshakes and signs, we finally got together and find out what he wanted. And so he set me down in his chair, and within about 15 minutes, he had that portrait made. I call it a portrait because that was a charcoal drawing that he made. And he did a fantastic job. The picture on the right with three of us. The one that's standing with my personal friend, he and I were very close together, but I'm on the right-hand side of the picture with a little cocky hat on. So I didn't have a camera, but a friend of mine had a camera, and he's the one that took those pictures. Another friend that took those pictures, and he said, "I'll make sure all of you guys get this." And so it's very great. So I appreciated it that he got a picture, gave a picture of. I never did get a camera while I was over there. And then on the next two, on the left-hand side, that little boy, on the right-hand side, that little boy, brother, the tallest one there, that's me. I was walking past there, and this guy said, "Come on in and get your picture made here." I didn't know him very well. I knew of him, but I didn't know him very well. He was a different organization than I was in. And that was his little boy that took care of his laundry. Well, I had one that was smaller than him. And so one day, when I was walking in, going back into our village there, I lived on the third floor. And this little boy was shaking my britches leg. He said, he's trying to make sure, washing his hands and clean it like washing my hands to clothes, and then do my pants. I finally figured he wanted to do my laundry. So I told him to stand still, and I went up and got my laundry and gathered it, put it in a little bag, and sent it down to him. And he tried to catch that bag, for goodness sakes, as small as he was. But and of course, I had to put some soap in it for them to use. And then of course, I put a few other things. They don't want the money. They don't want you to buy stuff with your money. They want something to eat, because they told me one particular person who could speak English very well said, "We don't need your money. We got the money, but we don't have anything to spend it on." So I knew then to maybe send some C rations and K rations down to them. And so that's what I did in my bag to help the lady. God, she had lost her husband, I found out, in the war. And so they were, of course, not German. They were Austrian. And, Austria was forced into the war anyway. All the men were forced to fight for Germany. And then there by the Jeep, that's a hard-top Jeep. It was made especially for messengers, because we had to run through snow, sleet, rain, didn't make any difference. We had to deliver And so that's my partner there. He and I worked together. He happened to be from McKinney, Texas. I mean, not McKinney, Gregson, Texas. And we were on a trip at that time. It was sometime in February, about not too long after we started working as a messenger. And so there was another guy, the messenger, was passing by, and he stopped and he took up. I said, "Take our picture while you're there." We were sort of pulled off the side and we started talking to him because we saw him coming. So we spent a few seconds talking. So he took our picture while we was there. That's right out in the countryside there in Austria. Cold. Oh, it was cold. Okay, this map, I sort of complicated it a little bit before I left Salzburg and Linz. Anyway, when I got my discharge, I made a notice to come home. I wrapped that up, folded that bugger up, and put it in an envelope, and I brought it home. So this is a map that shows all the Russian zone, the American zone, and military districts, the Austrian, where Austria is and everything, and also Berlin's up way up above the map, and the English zone, the French zone, and I forget some of the others, but anyway, they're mapped out. These zones were set up by President Roosevelt. Was set up. They had the three, the English and the Russian and American presidents got together, and the leaders got together, and President Roosevelt decided on these zones. And so, anyway, I discuss this with everyone that I meet that comes into the museum. I discuss this map with them because a lot of them come in and ask where the certain town is that they would like to know because their grandfather, their dad, or whoever was fighting there. And so, anyway, I explained all this map to them and everything. Salzburg is located right there. Maybe you see my finger.
Yeah.
That's Salzburg. Linz is right up here. Linz is the city where old Hitler was born in the first place. And the Russian zone was right across the river. That's the Blue Danube River right there, passing through. And I've sat down many times on that, yes, right there. And many times I would look out at this park. I was sitting in this park, look across. The Russians would meet up on the Austrians over that side of their zone. Well, we couldn't do anything about it. They carried rifles, they carried the weapons and everything else, but we didn't. So that's about the extent of it, and I use that now. This right here is Rosard Square in Salzburg, Austria. And this is a brick street. This is brick all the way around here. And they may have changed it by now, but I don't know, it was brick. Whenever I drove my Jeep right back in here and went to this window right there at the back of that building. That's where I would always pick up my messages right there at the message center. That's where I worked several times there too, many times there in that area. I went and did something, I just touching that. Okay. And,
Why do you feel it's important for younger generations to learn about past conflicts from individuals who fought in them?
Why do you think it's important for younger generations to know about past conflicts?
I think historically would be good partial knowledge to knowing what has happened in the past, and that these young people growing up can possibly do something about it later on and more do a better job. I think my generation did a damn good job. Pardon my language, but I think that's what they did. They did a very good job. But still, yet there's a lot of work still to be done to bring it back into a great nation. And so these young people knowing something about the history of the war, history of the past United States, and well, as far as that goes, the world, they would give I think they would have a better sense of value in what they need to do to be able to increase and do better, make things much better for us, for our country, for living conditions, etc. That's a short version of it.
If you could go back, would there be anything that you would do differently?
Yes. If I look back, actually my discharge from the Army and going into the reserve, I had an opportunity to be recalled back into the reserve and stay in the Army. I've said this many, many times. I should have stayed there and taken a call and gone back into the Army and made my career in the Army. I don't know. That has been my thoughts, I guess you say, about making a change in my life. And so that's about the only thing, I guess, that would really. However, I also think about what happened when I joined the Air Force and all that time. I was married to my wife for 61 and a half years, my first wife. And then I would probably not been able to meet my present beautiful little darling wife if I had stayed in the Army. Because I've been probably a whole lot better different situations, in my life. That's about it, I think. I think everything else has sort of been fairly decent to me, the jobs I had, the work I had, and the people that I've met, the people that have future to me, that still be in my life in the future. Okay.
What was the transition back into civilian life like, since there was less of an understanding of mental illnesses like PTSD in the mid-1900s?
Was the transition like back into civilian life?
I didn't have much of a problem with transition in my life after I came back out, because as I said a while ago, I found a job fairly decent. I found well, let me back up just a little bit. I got from the military, from the Army, I got a discharge. Well, what do you call it? It was
Pension.
my dad had a heart trouble real bad, and I had to quit. He had to quit work. That's why I took over and started taking care of my family. But when I was drafted in the Army, I turned in for hardship discharge while I was in basic training, but it was turned down. After I went through my basic, and then I got furloughed there to come home for 15 days, I think it was, after training. He and I went around and got letters from several people, doctors, his dentist, the gentleman that signs the Texas driver's license, because whenever he was younger, when my dad was younger, he was his deputy while he was a sheriff. And so he's a director of motor vehicles, you know, then, and his son took over after him. But anyway, we got a letter from him, and we got a letter from several other people. And so he turned those in. Well, I didn't get them until after I got over into overseas in Germany and Austria. So one day, finally, I found them in there. I had them in there. They came in one at a time, you know, one at a time. So I finally got them all in. And then I went ahead and turned in for my discharge, or hardship discharge. And they came in. So I came home early, actually. But come to find out later on, some of the people that I was with, that were my friends that I was working with, they were 6 months later, they came home. So I would have only stayed about another 6 months. So anyway, then I started working with them, trying to find a job there a little bit, which I didn't look too very hard for one, because I had, you know, I mentioned earlier that I had that money and everything that sustained my life until I did find a job. And so that's about the extent of it right there, because I had to get out on the hardship discharge to take care of my family, because my mother and dad couldn't work, and I had 2 young sisters, so they had all they were living on, and I don't know how they did it, but they did, $37.50 a month. That's what I sent home to them. Now I put $15 with that out of my pay, which I only drew $31 a month, and overseas. Before I went overseas, it was $21 a month, but I got a $10 raise after I went overseas. And so anyway, I took $15 of that and sent it to my home, to the government, rather, to put the government put more with it and send that $37.50. That's the allotment that they would pay to the family. And so that's what they lived on. How they lived on, I don't know what they did. And so, but it wasn't a very good living, to tell you the truth. Now, my dad did work in on his farm and ranch. That they furnished him a house, and him and my mother, sisters, a house to live in. Well, he was working for them, but he would only work maybe 2 hours a day. The gentleman happened to be a lieutenant that went through the war, and he had gotten his discharge earlier. But at the end of the war, he got his discharge, came home to take care of his family. He had an older mother and dad, and they were not being able to run the ranch farm. So he took over sort of, and he hired my dad, and he understood his situation, and so therefore he took care of my dad and mother as much as they could.
Do you have any? Okay.
Sorry, I was going to say we could go ahead and switch over to our audience questions now. Thank you so much, Emma, for facilitating the first half of this interview. And George, thank you so much for sharing so openly about your experiences, and being, you know, honest and open with our audience. That's really meaningful, and we really appreciate that. We have just a few more questions from the audience that we've gotten. And I think you kind of answered this one, but I'm gonna ask you to summarize. Can you tell us the locations that you served at overseas?
Locations.
Well, I'm going to start off with my landing in Le Havre, France, and then I was on a boxcars. We were put on the German boxcars. Now I'm talking, they were enclosed type boxcars, but they were a heck of a lot smaller than American boxcars. I'll tell you for sure, because there were only 27 of us guys could stay on there, plus one little pot stove that we could keep warm with. And this was in This was in December, January, right around that point of time. And so we rode towards Paris, but then it sort of veered to the right, left, rather, went up into Nuremberg, went up into Luxembourg, and then that went straight, then turned to the right, went right straight to Nuremberg. That was our first stop that we were going to make. That took about 3 weeks on that, and we were living in those boxcars. One thing I can say, though, was the Army took care of us. They would stop for breakfast and feed us a real good breakfast every morning. Then when it was lunchtime, they would stop and give us a very good lunch. I mean steaks and stuff like that, good stuff. And then at supper time, you might repeat the dinner time. Oh man, I'm telling you, us GIs, we were happy with that, to get some good food there like that. So we had to go off of a boxcar and cross over ice, walking over ice and everything, and snow, back into over a little hill. They had a huge tent set up, and we go inside that tent and finally get warm, and then have our lunch. And boy, I'm telling you, we really enjoyed that. Then we'd march back to the train. They did that in each boxcar, do the same thing, And so until the whole one, that was a pretty good sized train carrying all those people. And I don't know how many GIs were in there, but there was a bunch. And we got into Nuremberg, and there was another unit that moved in and taken over all the services. So boom, there we were without a job. So the lieutenant told us all, said, don't panic, we'll get you a job. So they moved us on down to Rosenheim, Germany, which are way down south, not too very far from Munich. And we got there, and of course you can imagine what we smelled like. I'm sorry to mention that, but I'll tell you for sure, we were not very clean. And so we got into that little place, and it happened to be an old school that was shut down, and they went and started the furnace and got it all up and got a place warm, and then heated up all of the boilers to heat the hot water. Well, every one of us jumped in those showers and got cleaned up as best as we could, as fast as we could. Anyway, we marched. We were there for about 3 days, and they marched us around in the snow just to keep us active and keep us limber, to keep them forgetting about what we were supposed to do. And so then we finally got on a transportation, then buses, and went into Salzburg. Then that was our job. That's what we started working out of there. I was later transferred to Munich, Germany, and I failed to mention that a while ago. I failed to mention that I was transferred from Salzburg to Linz later on, and so they needed some more people up there, Linz, for working, and I had to work in the place up there, which was better than the one in Salzburg, to tell you the truth. The control center was much better than the one in Salzburg. It wasn't way out there in that big old castle, I guess you might say. But anyway, that's that, and meeting a bunch of my buddies, my friends, all of us become good, very close friends. There was about 6 sets of drivers, which were about 12 drivers, and we were busy. I mean, busy all the time. And so I really enjoyed it, really loved the job. And I got to see a lot of the country, and some beautiful country, and throughout Austria, especially. Now, Germany, I saw an awful lot of destruction. Didn't see too much destruction in Salzburg or in Linz or in between. There was some, noticed I saw some. Right there in Salzburg, there was some, but they tried to, Salzburg's got a lot of old buildings, old cathedrals and stuff like that. And very old and very beautiful architecture, beautiful architecture. And so they sort of left those alone. And anyway, I thought was very good. So they left history still stand.
Interesting. So it sounds like you actually got to visit a lot of what are now popular destinations in both Austria and Germany.
Yeah.
So kind of a follow-up question to that is, have you been back to any of these places since your service?
No, ma'am. I have never been able to afford to make the trip. It's hard to say, but I would love to go back to Salzburg. I would love to go to see Normandy. I never did get to go there. And let me say this, during the war, England, when they were being bombed and tore up so bad, they put out pleas for help, clothing, whatever, My girlfriend at the time in Houston, she was about the same size as this lady a young lady in England. Well, she sent a care package to her with all of the clothing and shoes and all that kind of stuff, And they were pen pals. They were pen pals for years and years and years after that. And so she said, "Why don't you go over to England and see her?" Well, I put in for a leave to go over there. It was approved. And so I was about ready to go. And what happened? My discharge come through. So you know exactly what I took. So I didn't get to see Irene Tomlinson ever. And so I would love to have went back to England to meet her. And so my girlfriend said, "Go see her." Well, I had the opportunity to go, but I got to get my discharge. So, but they just hoped to come in. The military would pay for my duties, pay for my transportation over there and everything. It didn't pan out. So.
Well, maybe that was some divine intervention then. Who knows? I have just one more question from our audience, Mr. George. And they want to know what your rank and position was in the military.
I made PFC in the Army. And then when I joined, shortly after I joined the reserve, I was also already assigned to the reserves as a PFC. And then started going to these Saturday meetings for the training in the reserves. I made corporal. But then when I joined the Air Force, I went back to PFC again. The Air Force still had the PFC ranks just like the Army could. And of course, we wore the Army uniform there for a while after we joined the Air Force until we got our new ones, which was I joined in 51. We finally got our uniforms in 52. So Air Force uniforms, that is. And they're not like they are today.
Yeah, good point. All right, well, those are all the questions we have from our audience. Again, I want to thank you so much from the World War II Museum and from all of our viewers. This has been a really unique and very special experience for us, and we really appreciate your time. And we thank you for your service to the United States and to the military and everything that you fought for all of us. And we'd also like to thank Emma one last time for your time and for your questions and for your last little bit of volunteering for the museum.
I love it. I love that service, and I love to volunteer at the World War II Museum. My wife and I both said every time we go down there, it just seems like it's going back home, Because we just love it down there. I love to do the duties that I was doing down there and everything. And she's a volunteer too, but she's only been a very short time, and all of this stuff broke out. We can't go anymore, it seems like, and so that deters us. Well, we're just sick over that. So we're doing the best we possibly can to continue volunteering from here, from our home, and talking to people. In fact, day before yesterday, we went to the post office to mail off some stuff to a friend of ours up in Wyoming, Nevada. And so, at Reno, in fact, I don't know whatever. Anyway, up to there. Anyway, I was sitting out the car waiting for her to get all the mail done. And a gentleman walked up to the car. And so he reached down and said, I want to thank you for your service. Because I wear my cap, with it. And so for the 2nd Infantry Rainbow Division. So he said, I want to thank you for your service and talk to me about, everything. And so we shook hands and talked to him. And I asked him about his service. He said he was in the Air Force, so good. Right there at Shepherd Air Force Base. He'd been in 28 years. He'd already been in. So I'm pretty sure he was an officer, but I never did ask him for his rank, because we never did that. And so anyhow, he left and everything. We talked about it. Well, at the same time, my wife had come back, and I didn't know she had these, but she did, had a brochure of World War II Museum. So we hit him up right away.
Wonderful.
And he said, oh man, he said, I love it. Okay, so as soon as they can get a chance to go down there, he's going to go, I'm sure.
Well, thank you for volunteering, not just at the museum, but it sounds like recruiting new membership. We always appreciate that. So we're going to go ahead and sign off now. We're getting lots of thank yous on our Facebook and in our Q&A, thanking you for your time and letting you know how special this was for everyone. So just reiterating that. Thank you so much to everyone, to all of our viewers, and especially to you, Mr. George and Emma, for joining us today.
Thank you.
We hope to have you back at the museum real soon, but until then, we hope you stay safe and stay healthy, and everybody have a great weekend. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. And God bless each and every one of you. I love you all. Bye-bye.